2 months before he died, Sam Neill stood in front of a camera and shared the words every cancer patient hopes they might one day say. His latest scan showed no cancer anywhere in his body. Not a single trace remained. You could hear the relief in his voice. After years of uncertainty, he finally sounded like a man who believed the hardest chapter was behind him. He even spoke about another film he was excited to make. Life seemed to be opening up again. But just 2 months later, everything changed. On July 13, 2026, Sam Neill died suddenly at the age of 78. His family described his passing as unexpected, and those 2 words left people struggling to make sense of what had happened. How could someone who had just celebrated a clean bill of health be gone so quickly? Only weeks before his death, Neill had spoken openly about receiving remarkable news from his doctors. After years of battling a rare and aggressive blood cancer called angioimmunoblastic T-cell lymphoma, his scans finally showed no evidence of disease. Even his medical team had been amazed by the results. For Sam, it felt almost impossible to believe. He admitted that somewhere along the journey he had stopped expecting good news, so hearing those words carried more emotion than he could easily put into language. But here's where the story becomes even more remarkable. His fight had been anything but easy. When he first revealed his diagnosis in 2023 through his memoir, he explained that chemotherapy had eventually stopped working. The outlook was grim. He found himself facing a future that seemed to be shrinking by the day. Then came an opportunity that changed everything. He qualified for an experimental treatment known as CAR T-cell therapy, which uses the body's own immune system to target cancer. Against the odds, it worked. By the spring of 2026, he was celebrating remission and talking about the future with genuine excitement. He wasn't just surviving anymore. He was planning, dreaming, and looking forward. But could anyone have imagined how little time remained? One comment he had made in earlier interviews suddenly carried a completely different meaning after his death. Sam had often said he wasn't afraid of dying. At the time, those words reflected quiet acceptance. Looking back now, they feel almost haunting. When news of his passing spread, people remembered that calm outlook, but they were still stunned. Nobody expected the ending to arrive so soon. Sam Neill died at St. Vincent's Private Hospital in Sydney, surrounded by the family he had always placed above fame. In their statement, his loved ones made one thing clear. He remained cancer-free at the time of his death. There had been no public announcement of a relapse, no long decline, and no warning that anything was seriously wrong. No official cause of death was released, and the family chose not to fuel speculation. Instead, they thanked the doctors and nurses who cared for him during his final hours and focused on remembering a life filled with love rather than unanswered questions. But why did this loss hit people so deeply? Within hours, tributes flooded in from around the world. Leaders, actors, directors, and lifelong friends all shared memories of the man behind the famous roles. Yet one message captured the feeling better than almost any other. It came from Nicole Kidman, someone who had known Sam long before Jurassic Park made him a household name. Back in 1989, Nicole Kidman was just 18 years old when she landed one of her first major film roles in the thriller Dead Calm. The pressure was enormous. A young actress, still finding her place, suddenly found herself carrying a demanding film alongside experienced performers. Sam Neill could easily have treated her as just another newcomer. Instead, he did something far more important. He made sure she felt she belonged. He didn't mentor her with grand speeches or constant advice. He simply treated her with kindness, respect, and genuine care. On a film set where a teenager could easily have felt overwhelmed, Sam became someone she could trust. The cameras eventually stopped rolling, their careers moved in different directions, and Nicole Kidman became one of Hollywood's biggest stars. Yet their friendship never disappeared. Decades passed, but the bond remained. Isn't it amazing how one act of kindness can shape an entire career? In 2019, they reunited publicly during a panel for Big Little Lies. Watching them together, it felt less like famous actors sharing a stage and more like old friends catching up after years apart. That history made Nicole's words following Sam's death even more powerful. After hearing the news, she said she was immensely saddened. She called Sam one of the greats and described him as charming, funny, intelligent, and endlessly kind. More importantly, she said meeting him at 18 completely changed how she experienced the film industry. He had taken her under his wing from the very beginning, and they remained close friends for the next 37 years. Her tribute was brief, but every sentence carried the weight of decades. And she wasn't the only one telling the same story. Again and again, the same words appeared in tribute after tribute. Kindness. Warmth. Generosity. These weren't carefully chosen phrases copied from one another. They came from people who had worked with Sam across different countries, different decades, and different stages of his life. Somehow, they all described the same man. But where did that character come from? Long before Hollywood knew him as Sam Neill, he was born Nigel John Dermot Neill in Omagh, Northern Ireland, in 1947. When he was 7, his family moved to New Zealand, where he spent the rest of his childhood. At school, surrounded by several other boys named Nigel, he decided to go by Sam instead. Later in life, he joked that it sounded friendlier and even a bit like the name of a cheerful Labrador. He often described himself as an awkward child. He wasn't athletic. He stuttered. He considered himself nerdy and never imagined becoming an international film star. Acting first entered his life through school plays, including one memorable performance where he played a bridesmaid, a story he loved retelling because it still made him laugh decades later. Could anyone watching those school productions have guessed what lay ahead? His first major break came in 1977 with the New Zealand film Sleeping Dogs, one of the country's earliest feature films in years. It helped launch not only his own career but also a growing national film industry. Bigger roles soon followed in Australia, then internationally. At one point, he even auditioned to become James Bond. Most actors would have considered it the opportunity of a lifetime. Sam later admitted his heart simply wasn't in it. He worried more about becoming an unpopular Bond than about missing out altogether. It was such an honest answer that it perfectly reflected the man people would later come to admire. His career eventually stretched across 5 decades and included an extraordinary range of roles. He played the determined Alan Grant in Jurassic Park, a submarine officer in The Hunt for Red October, a grieving husband in The Piano, a ruthless gang leader in Peaky Blinders, and the unforgettable uncle in Hunt for the Wilderpeople. In 2022, he was knighted for his contributions to film, and a few years later he accepted a Screen Legend Award with typical humor, joking that surviving long enough seemed to be the main qualification. But behind the laughter, another battle was quietly unfolding. When Sam finally spoke publicly about his cancer, he did so with remarkable honesty. He admitted there had been dark days when treatments failed and hope became difficult to hold on to. Many celebrities choose to keep illnesses private, but Sam continued working, giving interviews, and supporting causes close to his heart. He remained deeply involved with environmental issues in New Zealand and spent time at the winery he loved, where his playful personality never disappeared. He became famous for naming farm animals after friends from Hollywood and telling funny stories about life on the farm. Even during illness, he found reasons to laugh. But perhaps that's exactly what made people love him even more. Close friend Magda Sabansky later revealed that she had spoken with Sam shortly before his death. He sounded happy. He sounded healthy. He sounded excited about the future. Her memory matched perfectly with the hopeful interview he had given only weeks earlier. That is why his sudden passing felt so impossible to accept. As news spread, tributes poured in from every corner of the entertainment world. Steven Spielberg remembered his warmth and sense of collaboration. Laura Dern spoke about a lifelong friendship built on loyalty and quiet care. Cillian Murphy described him as one of the gentlest people he had ever worked with. Carl Urban praised him as a pioneer who helped inspire generations of New Zealand actors. Toni Collette called him a beautiful and decent gentleman. Alec Baldwin wished they had found another chance to work together. Colin Trevorrow remembered a deeply soulful man. Rachel Griffiths planned to open a bottle from Sam's own winery in his honor. Even political leaders in both New Zealand and Australia paid tribute to his extraordinary legacy. What stands out is something surprising. Very few people focused first on Jurassic Park, the role that introduced Sam Neill to millions around the world. Instead, they spoke about his kindness, his humor, his generosity, his loyalty. The qualities that mattered most had nothing to do with box office numbers or famous characters. They remembered the man who quietly encouraged others, made people feel welcome, and never let success change the way he treated those around him. Perhaps that's why Nicole Kidman's tribute resonates so deeply. She wasn't simply remembering a co-star. She was remembering the person who believed in her before the rest of the world did. One simple decision to support a nervous 18-year-old created a friendship that lasted nearly 4 decades. Long after awards had been won and careers had reached unimaginable heights, that act of kindness remained one of the defining memories of her life. In the end, Sam Neill leaves behind far more than unforgettable performances. He leaves behind stories of compassion, quiet strength, resilience, and humor in the face of impossible odds. His final months reminded people that hope can appear when it seems least likely, and his final legacy reminds us that the greatest impact we leave often comes from how we treat others when nobody is paying attention. Maybe that's the real reason so many people felt they had lost someone they somehow knew, even if they had only ever watched him on a screen.